Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Katrina, for good introduction. So far, actually, we have heard a lot of academic metrics and a lot of interesting information and more relevant session from Mark. So I can continue from that. So what we will see that before getting into the session, how many of you have experience of your new development project put that on hold in between? There could be a multiple reasons. It could be a cost, or it could be a complexity, or it could be a quality of that development. So most of the scenario, most of the times, we used, even I too also had a lot of experience on the mid of development, business suddenly will come and say that, put it on hold. I don't have money for proceeding further. And even I'm not happy with that deliverable so far, what you have done it. So that, lot of times I felt hurt. I think similarly, you might also felt hurt for that. So how to really solve that problem because we need to stay away from the problem. We need to how to look at that and how to really address that problem. Yeah, so I try to apply continuous modernization concept on this to get rid of that problem. How many of you heard about the continuous modernization? Many of you heard about the modernization, but what about continuous modernization? So here, actually, I'm sharing my experience, what I have done, that applying continuous modernization in one of my projects and delivered successfully in my organization. So that would be, I felt that would be useful for you to adopt in your organization as well. Okay, so this is the problem, actually. This is the one just happened a couple of months before pandemic starting. So when I met business stakeholders, okay, he had a lot of questions on that to architect. Yeah, particularly, it was interesting. He didn't meet the IT managers. He didn't meet the relationship manager. He called architect. He put a lot of questions in front of me. Okay, so why I need to spend too much money on non-business requirements? Because we went to them and went with a lot of money requirement for technology debt remediation. Why do I need to put it? Because 60% of their annual budget simply moving to technology debt remediation instead of making the changes for business requirements. So it's a very valid concern, right? The next one, even after spending, there are so many security and non-compliance requirements because that is the business actually required to meet a lot of regulatory requirements and security requirements, like PCI DSS, like BWC requirements, a lot of information data privacy requirements. Still, there were a lot of open items even after spending too much money for it. Of course, as their information owner, they are responsible for meeting those requirements. Then they have a feel of why IT is not handling all my business agility, business BAU requirements in the same speed what we are moving towards. Because the business is volatile, highly volatile, and they need to make a lot of changes in the system, but IT is not really coping up with the change, the speed what business is moving towards. Even after that, there are frequent outages, failures. They have to really stay, we need to get an approval from them. That is really impacting their business, even in the monetary wise also. Then another thing is very interesting thing is we always go back to them. We are applying security batch or upgrades, software upgrades, so your system will not be available for next 2 hours. Then he was thinking that why do you need to, this is an IT problem, why I need to hear about all those things? These are all the very valid questions. How to really handle that? Okay, so I came to my desk, then really how to really look at that, because that particular portfolio, we had 120 plus applications. Yeah, so it's too many applications, yeah? So really need to understand what is that list, what about that applications, what exactly those applications serves, and what technologies were used, what architecture was used to build those applications. So that details I need to have that before addressing their concerns. Okay, so what I have done I did assessment. So this is a glimpse of that, yeah? Majority of the applications are at least decade or 15 years or 20 years old. It was built a long time ago. It was never touched or refactored or revamped after that. And the legacy technology, because it was developed in different point of time. So there are multiple technologies were used to build those applications. So whatever the technologies were in the market at that point of time, it was used to build that. For some of the applications are in Java, some of them are in Oracle forms, some of them are in .NET. So it's a huge amount of technologies, and that become legacy now, and legacy design was used. And good amount of bespoke applications, because the business process are not really industry standard business process. It is all like niche process which we need to address that. So we couldn't find any industry standard products or off-the-shelf products outside. So we need to go for bespoke. So most of the applications are built using bespoke. Yeah, as I mentioned, the technology diversity is huge. Actually, around 20 to 30 technologies were used just to build 120 plus applications. And large number of applications. Do we need really 120 applications for this portfolio? It is not really required, because since to meet the business agility, so new applications were created for even small capabilities. Because the older applications, the design and architecture was not compatible enough to extend the functionality, so they went with creating a new applications. That finally it made the landscape cumbersome, and it creates a lot of issues in the maintainability perspective. So what I did, so I'm slightly rushing up to meet the timeline. So if any of you have a questions, like we can keep it in the later stage. Yes. So I quickly move through this slide. What I did, so there are multiple types of applications. So I put the different, instead of defining the same one common approach for all the applications, define the workload-based specific approach. For example, analytical applications, we need to go for different approach. Transactional application, we need to go for different approach. And similarly, some technology applications, like what Mark has mentioned about the notification service. These are documentation management. These are all the technology components. Still, it was built as a part of the business application. So I put a different approach for different types of workload. Then identify the prerequisites. Yeah. Finally, what are the different common foundational elements are required to become an enabler for that new landscape, like a common data platform or cloud management platform or infrastructure virtualization. Finally, need to draft the plan, implementation plan for foundational elements, then implementation plan and roadmap for transactional business applications. Okay, now how to start? So approach is ready. It is architect-centric approach, yeah? So because the architect is completely driven this initiative, so that's why you can see always architect in the center. So I looked at that IT vision and roadmap first. Yeah, before moving further on that, we need to really understand that IT vision and IT roadmap, where the IT is moving towards. So that is the critical elements to align and adhere with. Is it enough? No. Business vision and roadmap also. Really, we need to understand what is the business vision, what is the business strategy, because this is the most common thing people used to ignore. Because we just look at that business requirement at that point of time. We never looked at that. Most of the cases, we missed to look at that business vision and strategy. Because whatever the changes we are doing it in the IT systems, we need to really adhere with that. Then landscape assessment has to be done. What it will give you that risk catalog. Yeah? With that risk catalog, architecture vision to be defined. So for the new world, new system world, what's the vision, or what for that has to be defined in architecture. Finally, what is required to sustain, not survival. So that is a very important thing, because there are a lot of issues that some quick tactical remediation would be required to survive first. Then what is required for sustain. So this is a kind of blueprint which we need to do. What is required for IT landscape assessment? Yeah, again, architect is the facilitator for doing that. He's not the only guy who will do that assessment. There are multiple stakeholders in this exercise, but architect will facilitate it. So vision and IT, business vision and IT vision. And this is the key things. Yeah, because the information architecture, technology architecture, and business architecture, these are all the artifacts. It could be the artifacts. Even some of the cases in your organization, you may not have that artifact for capturing the business architecture and information architecture. So technology architecture. So this is the critical element. We need to look at it and analyze it. Are we using the right technology? Or is there any redundancy in the business processes and business services? And in information perspective, it's the major things, like because since like a lot of changes are coming in the privacy law, the information law, it's across the country, we need to really ensure that what information really we are dealing with and what information we are storing. Are we storing, are we processing any information? Because when the GDPR law was mandated a couple of years back, literally struggled. So we didn't even have the clarity of which system is having the personal information, which system is just processing the information. So that analysis has to be done as a beginning of this exercise. Then we'll need to facilitate the workshop with IT and business stakeholders. For that, if you have any questionnaire, ready-made questionnaires, like for architecture trade-off analysis method review, right, they come up with a different standard set of questionnaires. Similar that if you have any standard set of questionnaires, you can use that. Otherwise, you create the questionnaire and facilitate the workshop with the business people and IT people to understand their concerns. Because both sides, IT side and business side, they have different sort of concerns. So in my example, like business said, no, I'm not able to use some of my functionalities. Even though I spend for that, the functionality, still I'm not able to use it. IT says that it takes more time to extend the system. So there are different sorts of concerns. We need to really gather it. Then with that information, we need to do the assessment. Is it a valid concern? It could be a kind of, it may require quick remediations. What really required to be done? Basically, we need to quantify the impact of the concerns. Finally, that will produce the risk catalog. So the risk catalog is the output of the landscape assessment. Okay, now we have the catalog, so risk catalog. What do we do with that? We need to classify it. So if the risk due to cybersecurity, which has zero tolerance, yeah, so which require immediate remediation, that is a survival risk. And similarly, if there is any risk due to the technology debt, that also, if that technology debt risk, it impacts the cybersecurity compliance, then that is also coming under survival risk. Survival risk requires immediate remediation plan, yeah. And if the risks are impacting the performance or reliability of the application due to that strongly requires compromise, and UX is not really user experience here, it is a compromising the user requirements. That's what, so you can interpret in that way. If it does, due to the agility issues, business agility issues, it impacts the longevity of the applications, that is more of sustainability risk, because business can still tolerate this risk, but with compromises, but not that survival risk. Now we have done the classifications. Now we need to really prioritize it. So P0 risk, the security risk, and regulatory cybersecurity NCRs. Yeah, these are all the critical things really we need to address, immediate things we need to address it. Even though whatever the plan we made it for modernization, we need to address that. And similarly, the end-of-life technologies, because it will create a problem in the long run that even it will become a security threats, because they may not even release the security patches. So if we don't get security patches, then security vulnerability will be increased for that particular applications. I'll quickly run through this. P1, similarly, it is about to reach end-of-life technologies, and cybersecurity threats, not really issues here, it's a threats. It can become blockers at any point of time. So those are all the things actually P1. P2 are the risks which can still live with it, but it will become issues in the later some point of time. We have done the prioritization. What to do with survival? Yeah. So the immediate thing is P0 threats needs to be addressed. P0 issues needs to be addressed. Primarily, most of the cases, it doesn't require any refactoring. Because if it is a survival issues, it requires some software upgrade or batch upgrade or infrastructure revamping. So that the quick actions, the remedial actions would be required so for P0 threats. Some of the cases, we may require some refactoring of some small amount of code. For example, some security threats. If you're, one case I can tell you that one of my security threats is currently credential-based authentication for services. But PCI requirement or cybersecurity requirement requires frequent renewal of credentials. Is it possible to renew the password-based credentials for the service which are consumed by multiple systems, even 40, 50 systems? Is it practically impossible? So those kind of things, we cannot mitigate those risks without remediating or refactoring the code. So those kind of small refactoring would be required, but mostly it would be more of batch upgrades. Similarly, subsequently P1 issues need to be addressed, and P2 needs to be addressed. This has to be handled as a part of the BAU activities, because we need to really address the BAU requirements. That we need to do it. Parallelly, we need to handle the tactical remediations. What to do sustain? Yeah. You can see that. So earlier, that landscape health was like this, the picture, the first picture. So we need to really make it the persons to stand or walk by doing that tactical remediation for the survival. Once he is walking, that business expectation is to go for marathon. So we need to, with that health, definitely we cannot run or marathon with that health, for the application health. So we need to really modernize that application. So what to do, how to do modernization? Yeah. Before moving the how part, let's see why part. Yeah. So age of the applications. I already given that the number, right? Most of the applications are 15 to 20 years old applications. So it's really difficult to modernize the applications without even doing refactoring. And base of the technology evolution, yeah? So now, earlier days, right, every 2 years or 3 years, we used to get new version of the technology. Now, if you look at that, every 3 months or every 6 months, new technology is coming out, new version of the technology is coming out, but we are not literally adopting it. If the application is developed using .NET, I'm living with the .NET. So if something is developed using Oracle database, I'm living with the Oracle database. Even if the NoSQL database is coming out, even small Couchbase is coming out, Cassandra is coming out, I'm not able to literally use that. So if I want to use that, I need to completely redevelop the system, because the application was built using just one service, like what Mark has shown, that knife, that application started with thin, it become bigger. Now we cannot break it down unless we do the complete modernization of it application. Then business agility. So due to the different factors like pandemic, like different geographical issues. So there are a lot of changes in the business requirements. So earlier we used to do that 6 months release or 1 year release. Now it requires a monthly release, even fortnightly release. So we need to really adopt a lot of the business changes in the applications. So it means actually the application has to be extendable and scalable, and with minimum cost. They are not really ready to spend good amount of cost, because they are conservative in spending. So with minimum cost, what we have to really do that modernization. The time to market, again, is the key one. And cybersecurity and regulatory, because security threats are, every day we are getting the new threats, or new security attacks are coming out. We need to really protect our IT systems with that. Why continuous? So we need to really get that return quickly, because normally if you take that $10 million worth project, so it may take at least minimum 2 to 3 years to productionize it. Do we have really time to wait for that 2 years, 3 years time to get that real benefit of that application? No one is ready to. Even there are a lot of moving parts in that. Yeah, so people are moving out, technology is changing out. So we cannot stick with one architecture for 2 to 3 years nowadays. So the architecture needs to be changed quickly. So in that case, we need to really, we need to quickly put the things in the production. So that way, we need to go for continuous modernization rather than doing the complete modernization of the application. So survival, there are a lot of threats, but we need to really address the threats. At the same time, we do the modernization. So quickly, we need to do certain things to survive, and similarly, handling the business agility without any delay, and with a limited budget, and achieve the benefits of fast technology evaluation, and prevent the accumulation of technology debt. Because this is one of the key reasons why we went the continuation modernization. Because 50% of the budget is going for technology debt. Yeah, so no one can accept it. So in that case, if we don't do that, even if we take a modernization of that existing application, still I need to spend 50% of the budget for technology debt remediation. So that is not acceptable. So that way, if we deliver the things quickly, at least that part, I don't need to really do the technology debt remediation. I can prevent that. Where does it fit? Because this is normally the back office applications, because they don't really bother about it, right? So this is non-revenue generated applications. Yeah, so people who are generating revenue from the, for example, B2C side or e-commerce applications, they may be ready to spend money because they get revenue out of it. But some of the applications, the finance applications, the ERP applications, or HR applications, they don't get revenue out of it. But so that's why most of the organization are using the legacy applications in this area, back office area. So because since they are not getting the revenue, they don't bother, and the debt will be forever. And cybersecurity, and since they are dealing with sensitive information like personal information or finance information, so that requires compliance with cybersecurity and different audit requirements. And these businesses, primarily, even though they are finance, they are very conservative in spending in any organization. They don't simply leave the money. They will account for each dollar they are spending for their IT systems. So another one is aggressive time to market. That is a key thing that is applicable for all types of applications, not just these applications what I mentioned. What are the different modernization options? Yeah, so it could be a refactoring. It could be a replatforming. It could be a replacement, or it could be a rehosting. Yeah, so these are the things you guys might have heard that from Amazon or Azure, they have come up with the different options for 6R replacement, right? 6R options. So that 6R, I just pulled out that whatever the R's which are required to modernize the applications. Yeah. Let's see that when we can go for refactoring, when we can go for rehosting. So for rehosting, yeah, so my application is being used some seasonal, only during the audit time, annual report generation. Only that time I need 32 core machines. Remaining time, it will be used simply 10% or 15% of my infrastructure. Why do I need to spend that money for always if I host it in on-premises? So those kind of applications, if I rehost that in the cloud, I can just pay as you go. So that way, I can save at least 50 to 60% of my infrastructure cost. So that is the ideal candidate for rehosting, which doesn't even require any modernization. Yeah? And similarly, so if there are any infrastructure which require frequent security update or batch update, which we don't need to really bother about it. So in that case, the complete work can be offloaded to the third party, could be the cloud provider, by doing that rehosting. And if any application requires niche hardware and software, for example, if any of your applications requires GPU, so investing GPU-based hardware is just for one application, for on-premises data center, it's really very expensive. Similarly, any niche software, any off-the-shelf product, technology product, if you want to have it for any particular business requirements, having the expertise and buying the license, it would be too expensive for that. So we can think of rehosting into the third-party area. It could be in cloud provider. So similarly, refactoring. Refactoring is it's a highly critical applications, so which required modernization. That refactoring would be the best option. Similarly, services which were built using a legacy technology, what the parameters I mentioned earlier, if the application meets any of these parameters, that is the right candidate for refactoring. So replatforming is simple, actually. So again, it is a modernization, but it's not in the bigger way. But I can give you that one example. So one of my applications were built recently, 6 to 7 years before. Yeah, it is a recent days. Yeah, so it was built on top of one of the web application servers. Yeah, so that vendor, the application server vendor, stopped building that, enhancing the product. but our application was critical. So we cannot, you completely refactor the application because the architecture and design was good, and still it can survive for longer time. But only the problem is application server was the problem. How to really get rid of it? So just by doing the re-platforming, changing the application server and putting it into the container, so we can just deploy it. So in that way, I can quickly modernize it, and by doing a re-platforming, I can mitigate the risk. So those kind of, that was the right candidate for re-platforming. Replacement. So this is the another things actually started doing it. So instead of, if it is an industry standard business process is being followed in your organizations, why do we need to reinvent the wheel? So we can straight away go for the off-the-shelf product. And this could be resulted like for consolidating multiple small application with one off-the-shelf product. So that way you will get rid of the maintainability issues, you will get rid of that other infrastructure and other security, whatever the issues so far we are talking about. So modernization in details. So let's see that the modernization in different places, right? So data modernization, infrastructure modernization, and application modernization. So I'll quickly go through the data modernization and the infrastructure, then I can cover more in application modernization. So data modernization, right? So we used to build that lot of operational data stores on top of the transactional applications. Because earlier days, 10 years before, we don't really want to hurt the business critical transactional applications. In that case, whoever wants the information, whoever feeds the information, they will do it through operational data stores. Operational data stores were built on top of it. So after a period of time, so operational data stores become a kind of warehouse, even it become the terabytes of information, which become the blockers. Yeah, so we have a pool of ODSs, and it become a overhead, and that is really hard to govern it. So when we had a GDPR kind of information law, really difficult to find out what information, which database is hosting the PII information. So that kind of governance issues were also there. So how to get rid of it? We have built that data lake. Yeah, it could be a kind of enterprise data hub was built. It could be the common enterprise data repository. It is a single data repository in the organization, enterprise level, not just even department level. It is a single for the enterprise level. So that would be the single source for having entire organization data. It makes our life too easy to govern and provide the data, whatever the different requirements we have it. Yeah. Once we have that enterprise data repository, and then all the information which are from operational data stores move to enterprise data platform after having the model built, the domain-based data products. Yeah? For example, customer is a domain data product, and employee is a data product. Flight is a data product. So we build the domain-based data product and migrate all the information from operational data stores into data platform. After that, that is a single source of information for all different types of use cases. It could be a data services. If you need customer information, you don't need to really go to that different transactional application. You can go to the enterprise data platform. You can you can consume that information through data service. But if you want to do that any analytical purpose, so you can build analytical platform on top of the enterprise data platform. And similarly, for the data science use cases, this requires a different skill set. That those people are sitting in a separate department. They don't need to really talk with the multiple people. So they can just connect with the enterprise data platform people. They can get that whatever the data they needed, because all the transaction applications feed the data into an enterprise data platform, which can be used for different analytical requirements. Infrastructure modernization, you might be already aware of it. So earlier, from traditional data center to virtualized data center, then we can choose the appropriate hosting option. It could be a private cloud, public cloud, or it could be a hybrid cloud. Depends on your information sensitivity, depends on your application non-functional requirements. It's not a non-functional requirement, it is more of availability, scalability, and other reliability requirements. Yeah, so okay. So in the application modernization. So earlier we have seen that, right? So the issue tree, whatever the concerns, we got it from the IT business stakeholders, we built the issue tree, and we already referred business and IT roadmap. And we defined the architecture vision for it, where we are moving towards. Based on that, the target architecture needs to be defined. So for modernizing the application. One key assumption in application modernization, I always had it, and you can also have that. Yeah? So because that was the issue in the earlier days. You always have that assumption of that your project may be on hold at any point of time. Okay, so that assumption you need to make it, and you need to define the evolutionary architecture in such a way that even if the project is on hold, you might have already delivered value to the business for the money what they have spent. Okay, so now classification, the first step, the classification of application services. Already the previous session, right? So it clearly explained. There are different parameters we need to really classify the services. Based on the atomicity, based on the business criticality, based on the information sensitivity, that classification needs to be done. For example, booking, booking engine. Booking is a service. That might have been a lot of functionality required. So booking might be, pricing is another complexity, another service. It could be a search is another service. Payment could be the another service. Yeah, so that classification needs to be done based on the different parameters here. And based on the workload type. It could be a transactional workload, or it could be an analytical workload. After that, we need to prioritize those services. So some of the services, it can independently deliver the value for the business. So if your application has 10 functionality or 10 services to be implemented, if you deliver 2 services first, will they be able to serve the value for the business? That is the key parameters. You need to prioritize those services. Then refine the target architecture based on that, based on the phase of delivery. Then define the evolutionary architecture, because evolutionary architecture is critical. Really, this is happening nowadays. So earlier days, we defined one architecture, we started developing the product. Now we define one solution intent, that is a complete target architecture. Then we define revolutionary architecture based on that deliverable, what we are planning to make in that particular quarters or particular 6 months, the particular release. In that way, we will be aligning with moving parts, different moving parts. There could be changes in the technology strategies. There could be changes in the infrastructure deployment strategy. So you will be able to align with that if you are defining evolutionary architecture. Instead of stick with one architecture for the entire application, you can have the multiple evolutionary architecture for the different releases. Then you can put the components in production based on your roadmap. So another critical thing is there is a good amount of alignment would be required with the different stakeholders for security architecture. So security is the key component which we do not have any tolerance. So that things actually, and also things are, we get new version of the security regulations every 3 months or every 6 months. So we need to frequently engage with security teams or your cyber security teams or compliance teams to align with that. Are we addressing all their requirements, or is there any gaps? Similarly, integration architecture. Normally, integration architecture, I'm mentioning about the integration platforms, common platforms, which are available in your organization. So they're changing the strategy frequently. Either they go with messaging platform separately, or they go with service platform separately, or they go with ETL platform separately. How are they really going to, what strategy they have it in their roadmap? That we need to align with them. Information architecture, primarily for data and governance team, you need to really vet with. And deployment architecture, you need to vet with the infrastructure and cloud management team. Business architecture, that is a critical, because we don't need to really go with whatever the business requirement they are giving to us. There could be the possibility of optimizing the business processes or business services, and also some of the cases like information, you can get it from different business areas. Instead of we create information in this particular portfolio, we can just get the information somewhere else. For example, in my case, right? So there are information like currency information. Currency information is required for the different parts of the business processes, different departments. So but we need to get that information from outside. So instead of spending multiple times for getting the same information from different business, different stakeholders, we can just have that alignment with business stakeholders. Yeah, use case. So see, this is the use case. So I'll just give you the quick glance about the application that I've taken for the application modernization. That is a mission critical application. It requires a lot of compliance with regulatory requirements. PCI is the critical requirements, and cybersecurity, and a lot of privacy informations. And it's highly agile. Every month we need to do the release. Yeah? And it requires to support multiple payment methods or multiple types of payments like crypto, or it could be wallet, or it could be a credit cards, or it could be for different regions. So it's a highly agile. And it's a B2C application. And it requires a high throughput because zero tolerance for delay in payment transactions, right? So that this high throughput and high performance is a key requirement, and it will be accessed across globally. And the current application was built 20 years before with the legacy technology and legacy design. And it's a niche product, and it cannot be fulfilled with any industry standard product. So it requires complete redevelopment or bespoke development. And frequent occurrence of technology, because zero tolerance for technology debts, it requires frequent remediation because it was built using more than 10 technologies. Either one of the technologies always becomes a debt. Once we remediate the one technology debt, then another technology becomes dead. So that way, we need to keep the technology remediation continuously in our backlog. These are all the overall the components, what we have it. Like it has a B2C component, it has a back office component, it has a batch component, it has a B2B component, and it has MIS. You can see that it's a kind of, every component is a kind of mini application. So implementation roadmap. We started with B2C based on the classification, the prioritization. So started with B2C because it delivers value quickly. So that way, B2C component was prioritized and made it live. Then once we put that live, we need to really align with other strategies. So infrastructure modernization, it happened in parallel. It was handled by different teams. So we need to migrate that into cloud, or migrate that into virtualized infrastructure. That was done. Yeah. So next step, it is more of back office because currently the legacy component was required to compromise multiple functionalities by the business users. So in that way, back office component will deliver next best value for the business. Parallelly, all the brown components, yeah, so the technology upgrade was done to remediate technology debts. And the third one, it is more of migrating the analytical workload. Currently, the legacy system has its own MIS component. Instead of having its own MIS component, already we have an enterprise data platform as built. So why don't we migrate the data into that platform for offloading the analytical workload on that areas? Because that was built with the right technologies like Hadoop or like Kafka or like Elastic. So why don't we push the data into that platform instead of using those technologies as a part of application boundary? Finally, we migrated all those components and we put the entire application live with complete modernized. So there was one good thing is we had to some point of time, like 2 years, we need to really handle brown and green in parallel. Yeah. So the top part is brown. So we have continued to survival. We need to take out the technology debt remediation. We don't need to really wait for that modernization to be completed. So it was started. At the same time, the enabler components were developed in the modernized. This was built using a microservices-based architecture. So for microservices, we need to have a gateway. We need to have a service registry. We need to have a security component. So all those things are required before implementing the business services like microservices. So the first step, we built that platform components were built and it was productionized. So that way, when we started building up B2C services based on the microservices architecture, we were able to handle the BAU requirements also. Because after that, the second step, you can see that whatever the business BAU requirements, if it is qualified enough for building a microservices, we built as a microservices rather than doing the changes in the existing application. In that way, we are preventing the accumulation of the technology debt, and at the same time, we are slowly modernizing the complete applications. So in that way, the B2C components were built, then back office components were built, then later, finally, the data platform we leveraged for MIS load, and then we decommissioned the application. So in that way, we split the budget. So if you are getting 10 million, so 5 million for modernization, 3 million for business as usual, 2 million for technology debt. Yeah, so instead of getting earlier occurrence, we had a very bad experience that we got 10 million, we spent 5 million, nothing delivered, we delivered only architecture, it was stopped. Yeah? So instead of doing that way, we just got 5 million, 3 million for BAU, 5 million for modernization, 2 million for technology debt. It's a hypothetical number, don't quote me, it's the valid number or not, it's a hypothetical number. So, okay, so that is how it was spent. So in that way, it was not really hurting business users' wallet. Yeah? So they had to spend only 5 million, but at the same time, within 3 months, within 6 months, they are able to see some benefits. They were able to see that changes in the B2C components. So this is how we made all the stakeholders happy, because we are moving we are modernizing the application, at the same time, we are remediating the technology debt, and without spending much. So what benefit we have achieved? Zero impact on managing businesses. Still, business users are happy with that agility, but in the same pace. But once complete modernization is completed, then the pace was improved. Pace will be improved. To minimize the technology debt, we are already trying to prevent the accumulation of technology debt. No big investment, because we slice, even whatever the money they are spending, we have just sliced it for a different purpose, and we spend that money. Instead of completing the modernization in 2 years, it took 3 to 4 years to complete modernization. Then quick return on investment, because they are able to see something in the production quickly, and they started using that for their business requirements. And completely eliminated regulatory non-compliance reports. What are the different challenges? Stakeholder management was a key. The problem, because when I proposed this, no one even believed that. It's definitely not possible. Continuous modernization we cannot deliver that value. So the perception, changing that perception, it was really challenging. So we need to provide a lot of facts, like you mentioned that fitness functions. Yeah, so we have to write fitness functions. This is how that was one of the areas, was one of the ways we approved that. The architecture definitely will work for their requirements. Yeah. The first one is the expertise. So since we are handling BAU and modernization in parallel, the skill set was a major problem. So we need to have a domain expertise. At the same time, since we are modernizing the component, we need to have the strong technology expertise. People who are living and breathing that applications, they are very strong in the domain, but they are not even familiar with the new technologies. So balancing these two, if you go out, take the people from outside, they are very good in technologies, but they don't have any clue on the domain experience of these applications. So that managing the both, it was critical. And handling green and brown, at the same time, there could be a throwaway effort. So that requires, we need to convince the business stakeholders. Supporting both upstream and downstream systems. Some of the interfaces have to work with legacy system. Some of the interfaces have to work with new modernized system. So balancing both, it is really difficult. And managing the business stakeholders on the throwaway effort for some time. This was not a difficult part, but we need to really justify that this will be a throwaway effort. And alignment with multiple moving parts. Yeah, by the time we started the project, the strategy or technology strategy was different. When we are moving towards, then the technology strategy was different. So that, by doing the evolutionary architecture, we were able to manage the multiple moving parts. That was very critical. So definitely, I don't think it is possible with a waterfall method of development. So it requires agile method of development to do the continuous modernization. That's it.
Okay, I think we have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions. We have several online ones. Okay, how to prevent technology debt?
Prevent.
How to prevent technology debt?
Okay, so while doing the modernization, so what the B2C component, when we took that, so B2C component, each component, what I mentioned, B2C, B2B, MIS, or batch components, it requires a different sort of regulatory requirements. So in that case, B2C, it is a component, it requires to meet a lot of critical security requirements. That way, if we rebuild the B2C component with new technologies, I don't need to really bother about the security requirements to go for quick remediation of technology debt. That way, I can prevent technology debt remediation by prioritizing B2C component as the first one to modernize.
Okay, another one. Did you face any resistance in the team maintaining the legacy system? How was it handled?
What was that?
Did you face any resistance in the team maintaining the legacy system?
Yes. Yeah, it's huge because the team, because they are living with that, they were breathing with that legacy systems, and strong resistance because they don't have required skills in place and they are not really ready to adopt the technology, new technology skills. There are strong resistance, but we are, by balancing it out while doing the work, and we have the mixture of both the team with legacy team and the new team. Yes, in that way, we'll handle that work dynamics during the development. So they will also learn the new technologies. These guys also will learn the domain.
Yeah. And last question, why modernizing a 10-year application that is working well and generating revenue in production?
Why? The first part.
Why modernizing a 10-year application that is working well and generating revenue in production?
Okay, so modernization, if it works well, it's fine. Yeah, there's no need of doing anything. But in this case, the changes in application are very huge because due to different reasons now, changes in the business climate. So if there are no changes, if it is a static application, if it was built even 20 years before, we are not making any changes, we are not doing any releases, even one release in a year or two. If you are doing it, don't do modernization. Yeah? But if you have any problems with the tech debt, if you have challenges in enhancing the product, if you have challenges in the usability perspective, go for modernization. Otherwise, don't do that modernization.